Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. How are you?
I'm very well, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. I can't complain.
The woman in waiting, the person that everyone has been. I've been just receiving so many messages, and they're like, "Oh my God, she's coming! She's coming!" I said, "No, she's not coming to the UK. Calm down,
I
she's not
wish.
coming. But we're going to do an Instagram live, and inshallah, God willing, she'll be in the UK soon after we get this vaccine sorted. But I'm glad to have you here.
Thank you.
How
Thank you.
how are you, and how's the family?
They're good. We just got back from a road trip to Las Vegas, so they're in post-vacation wind down, but alhamdulillah.
Wow. Wow. And how many hours of distance is that from where you are? Las
It's
Vegas.
a 5.5 hour drive. So I'm
Wow.
one.
Okay. Have you recovered?
No, I have not.
Okay, I'll be a bit easier on you with the questions because I've been inundated with questions. I mean, I put a couple of posts out, but I didn't realize the response would be this great. So I don't think I'll be able to ask you all of the questions because we'll be here for like 4 hours. So some of the questions I think a lot of the questions, to be fair, you've actually covered them on your podcast. I'll tell people to obviously to go and check out your award-winning Lights On podcast with Amalia, and I'll put up links so hopefully people can check them out. But I really wanted to, before getting into the questions, I've gave a little introduction about yourself, but do you mind doing an elevator pitch just to talk about who you are and the type of work you do before we go into your institute and some of your projects that you've got coming up?
Sure. I'm Angelica Lindsey-Ali. I am a public health professional. I've been working in the field of women's wellness, specifically women's sexual health, since 1998. I am an executive for a behavioral health organization here in Arizona, and I've been doing that work since 2003. I am religiously trained, so I have ijazah in Maliki Fiqh. I I don't know what else. I'm an author. I'm a researcher, so I spend a lot of time conducting research. I just last year finished a 2-year cohort with the University of Chicago School of Medicine Institute on Islam and Medicine, which a lot of people don't know about. And yeah, and I'm one of your pupils. A
No,
lot
you're
of
not
you,
one of our pupils. No,
yeah,
you're not one of
no,
you.
but
You forgot. Sorry to cut you, but you forgot to mention your. Is it trained dancer,
yes,
storyteller,
yes,
public speaker? Come on,
yes.
like you have to give
You know, I
yourself
don't
your
like to talk
flowers.
about myself.
No, no, but
I
people have to know. People have to know
that's
who they're dealing with. So, and also again,
exactly.
the book passage. I don't see you post it as much as you should do because it's brilliant. I want to speak a little bit about it. But obviously, you're an author of Passage. You've been featured in BBC. You've been featured in Washington Post. You've been featured in Vice, amongst other things. So yeah, I'm definitely going to make sure people know who they're dealing with. This isn't just someone who's just speaking casually. She knows, she more than qualified and knows her stuff. So yeah, I definitely have to give you your flowers.
Yeah,
Can you?
my biggest accomplishment probably this year is founding the Village Auntie Institute, which is a school for women to gain knowledge and gain certification in some of these practices. So that's probably my biggest flex of the year.
Lovely. And have you had any courses since you've established the institute? And are there any courses coming up? Do you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yes. So this year, since Ramadan, I'm just about to close out my sixth course of the year. So I've taught over 1,200 women this year. The current course that I'm teaching is Foundational Womanhood, which is a rites of passage program that is designed for women. It's an interfaith, intercultural, interracial program for women. And we're closing that out January 23rd with our graduation. And then after that, I'm going to take a short break and then, inshallah, come back and teach a 3-week seminar on storytelling. And that will be my very first class that is open to both men and women. So this is the first time brothers will be able to take a class with me. And then I'll have a 1-day, 4-hour workshop on jonge, which is the Senegalese art of seduction. So that should be a fun class.
And are there tickets available on sale for the course? The one that you said closes out on the January 23rd.
No, so the course that we're having now, we're closing out January 23rd. So we will put out the tickets for the storytelling workshop and the seduction workshop somewhere around the second week of February, inshallah. So be on the lookout because
And
like the
Yeah.
classes sell out within a few hours. So
Wow. Wow. And is the course going to be over like, is it extensive over like one day or is it a weekend or is it over like a couple of weeks?
So the storytelling course is actually 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks of interactive instruction. And then on the fourth week, we'll have a storytelling slam, both here on Instagram and on Clubhouse. So I'm really excited about that. And I'm excited because it'll be the first opportunity for brothers to participate. Usually
Okay.
I'm like, I don't want brothers in sessions at all. The seduction
Yeah.
workshop will be a 1-day workshop. It'll be 4 hours. It'll be interactive. We'll be making things. We'll be doing things. We'll be dancing. Be doing lots and lots of things. And that one, of course, is for women only, and it's just 1 day, and it'll be the registration will be limited to the first 150 women. Usually I get about
Okay.
200 plus who try to sign up for courses, and they literally sell out in just like hours. So be on the lookout for that.
Mashallah.
And I always post everything on my Instagram first.
And is that something that you do intentionally, like in terms of your courses are quite selective? Because I noticed even with the Ramadan, I think the intensive course, that was
Mhm.
sold out and there was limited spaces. Is that something that you prefer to like teach in small spaces or small numbers or
You know, if I'm totally honest, Habib, the Ramadan course is my first online course. I kind of went into
yeah,
like a deep depression at the beginning of quarantine. I was like, oh my gosh. So I'm used to teaching in public. I had just left
yeah,
Minneapolis where we squeezed like 200 women into the basement of a masjid. It was a nice basement. It wasn't bad. It was a nice basement. And I was just so used to doing everything person to person. So the Ramadan intensive was my very first online course. And it sold out in like 4 hours. We only had space for
wow,
100 women. So then I added a
mm,
second course. I was getting up, I was getting up after Suhoor and Fajr on Saturday and Sunday, every Saturday and Sunday during Ramadan to teach these women. I did not expect it to grow so large. I can accommodate up to 500 women in the sessions, but there's so much to managing that much energy in one space. I try to keep it to 100, 200, which for me is a small class, but to other people, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so much. So maybe in the coming year, inshallah, we'll look at ways to expand it. I have thought about doing pre-recorded classes, but I think one of the hallmarks of my teaching style is I like to engage with people in real time. So recorded
yeah.
classes seems like it takes a little bit of that intimacy away, but we'll see, inshallah.
Yeah, because I'll be honest, and I was actually meaning to speak to you maybe privately, but I'll say it here anyway. I was looking at the price point of your courses compared to like your contemporaries, and I think you charge very low, to be honest, for the course that for the no, honestly, because a lot of people will pre-record the courses, and
Mhm,
what they will charge is even probably double than what you charge.
mhm,
So that's what I
mhm,
was thinking whether you would think about because again, what I'm concerned with is that I don't want you to burn out because I can see
mhm.
you're doing a lot, and I can imagine people must be giving you so much, asking you so much questions, and ask you to do some requests to speak and this, that, and the other. And in order to continue doing hopefully what you're doing, and it's obviously your work is beneficial, so much people appreciate it, and your audience is now global. It's not even just the United States. You
Mhm.
probably need to kind of think about managing your time and one way of doing that is obviously making sure if you're doing like small courses that's like maybe 100 people you have to
Mhm.
charge what you're worth kind of thing. I think maybe that's an option other than doing so many like 3 or 4 like intensive courses over the year. So that's maybe something that you probably should kind of think about because I want you to continue doing what you're doing hopefully for many years to come, but if you keep working as you're working you're
Mhm.
gonna burn out. So that's the only thing that I'm kind of concerned with. I keep wanting to tell you to keep going, but at the same time, I know you need some time to look after yourself. And I even get so many messages, people emailing me, asking me to reach out to you, saying I've emailed the village auntie. She hasn't got back to me. This, like, I've had like about 6 people emailing me, asking me the same question, saying, "Can you ask this question? Can you ask that question?" And some of the questions, I'm like, "This isn't just a straightforward question. You probably need a one-to-one session."
Right.
But that you have to pay for it. I'm not gonna like people give me debriefs, tell me the whole backstory, and I'm just like, you know what?
Oh my
I
gosh, I didn't
appreciate the
know
question. I
that.
appreciate the love, but I can't make any promises. I said the best I can do is record this session, and I'll try and get to your question. But what you need is like a one-to-one intensive course, not even to catch up and have a 6 week or 4 week course. So I do think that. I mean, and if I'm getting it, and I'm not even obviously you there asking me to ask you, only Allah knows what the type of messages and how much requests you're getting. So that's why I think that it's important that you kind of preserve yourself as well and have some time to kind of, and it's good that you're taking some time away. Is it, did you say February, March, away from
Yeah.
social media for a little bit? No, that's good. That's good. So, and I'm glad you said that so people are aware that obviously you're not going to be as available as maybe you was earlier in the year. Because I think there was a period as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they said that you took about a week or 2 weeks off.
Mm-hmm.
People was messaging me asking, where is she? I said, I don't know. People was like, where is she? I was like, what do you want me to do? I
I
can't
feel so.
call her.
I feel. So, I
People
feel
was
so bad.
messaging me, and then it
I
got to the
never
point where I said,
posted.
I'm gonna stop posting. I said, I'm gonna stop posting you for a while because they were like, I'm trying to, because I would always direct people to you, especially women to you, and they were like, oh, she's not getting back to me. I said, maybe one of her team is, maybe a bit busy, this, that, and the other. She said she's not posting as much as she was. I was like, I'm not her admin. Like, leave me alone.
So
I can be
stop
quite rude
sending
to be
Habib
honest. So
messages. Habib has
no, you
like
no. No, no, they can, but I'll be honest. I'll tell them straight anyway. I wanted
I
to,
had no idea that they were doing that, and I feel so bad. But I do remember this had to be like in July. You sent me a message, and we hadn't talked in like a few weeks because we'll message back and forth, just to check in. And I remember you sent me a message, and I was literally at my wit's end, and you just sent me a message that said, "Hey, you need to slow down," and you're never that like direct or prescriptive in your advice, but it was like, I'm worried about you, you're doing a lot, I see you online, just if you need to tell people no. And I really appreciated that, because I knew that it came from a good place, but I had no idea that people were reaching out to you when I'm quiet on social.
no, I'll be honest because I think it was during I think it was around October, August. I did about 3 or 4 lives, and I was exhausted because you obviously have to prepare for it. You've got other stuff going on, and then I was seeing you every other day popping up on everyone's feeds with like doing IG live, and I was thinking, wow, okay, that must take a lot. And on top of obviously the other requests that you've got, and obviously your other family commitments, that's why I just make sure you look after yourself before you're looking after others. That's what I just wanted to make sure I say again. But can you talk a little bit about Passage? Because I don't hear you. Can you talk a little bit about like what it's about? And then I've got some questions that I wanted to ask you. But can you just give a little introduction to what Passage is about and what inspired you to write this book?
Sure. So I don't talk about Passage a whole lot because we're actually expanding it. So I'm going to be coming out with
Okay.
an expanded edition of Passage. We were doing hard copies, and I literally I wrote the book, I self-published the book, and every single copy that went out, I sent it out myself. And we sold hundreds of copies, and then we moved to a digital version. But in March of this year, inshallah, March 2021, we're coming out with an expanded version of Passage. And Passage was really in response to, it's a book that I wrote for me. So I wanted to have 2020 be the year that changed everything. And I'm a person who makes lists. I do a lot of goal setting, a lot of vision boards. And so I was putting this together, and my manager said, don't you think other women need that too? And I was like, well, there are lots of planners, there are lots of people who do this. They said, yes, but what is it that you can bring to women? And I was getting lots of requests from sisters in the UK. Shout out to the UK, because the UK is like literally half of my audience is from the UK. If I check top cities on Instagram, London is always at the top. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get to those women as easily as I wanted to. So I said, okay, how can I make a workshop in a book? So the book
Mm,
it's not very long, but it's very dense. There's a lot in there. So I tried to put everything that I bring in in-person workshops into the book. So there are biographical elements. There are aphrodisiac bath recipes. There are whole food recipes from an African-centered lens. There are exercises that women can do. And I've even had a couple of men who've bought the book and have said, I know you didn't write this for me, but I found a lot of benefit in it. It even has its own soundtrack. It's a
yeah.
playlist at the beginning of the book. So it's meant to be an interactive tool, and it's meant to introduce people who may not be familiar with my work to what I do. They can read it in the book, they can imagine what it's like to be in a workshop with me. And it's broken down into 4 different weeks. I've had people do it over quarters, so they've expanded it to do it over the whole year. And it's really meant to take a woman or a human being, right, from a point of maybe personal, not confusion, but catharsis. It's supposed to be a cathartic process where you go through and really start to hone in on those areas of your life that you can do some strengthening. And I mean, it's only $20. That's the other thing. It's a $20 book. I wanted it to be something that was beneficial, but also affordable for people. And I've gotten a lot of really good comments out of it. Yeah, and I'm just excited about the expansion of it. I've been working on it. And inshallah, in March, people can look for the new version.
No,
And you can
I'm
still
looking
buy
forward.
it. You can still
Sorry?
buy it. So women
Yes,
can still buy
I've sorry. Yeah, I've
it.
actually got a few copies left. I've got a few copies left. So anyone who's interested, let me know. I've got some of the hard copies. But what I loved about it is that it was it felt like, obviously even as a man reading it, that it was an insight into, for me it was like I was inspired by it because it was like this is what people should be reading, or especially women should be reading before even reading like Kunyas or like A Taste of Honey, because it was a lot about understanding yourself before you're trying to think about having a relationship with someone else. Whereas it kind of made me feel, oh, I missed the trick here, because a lot of my work was going straight into the action. Whereas this was like trying to understand yourself, understand desire from within, and cultivating that desire from within, and learning to love yourself. And then you can think about having any form of relations. And that's where I was just like, this is where not only myself, but I think a lot of men, we kind of missed the trick. And
Mhm.
that's why I was like, I was happy that not only that you wrote it, but it was steeped in your experience and knowledge from learning from the African elders in West Africa. There was verses from the Quran and hadiths, and
Mhm.
even saying from African sheikhs as well, and things like that. So I liked where it was interwoven, and it was very easy to read, because that's something that even I'm now starting to learn, is that sometimes, like if you're really passionate about something, and I'm
Mhm.
hopefully this is not going to be the case with the expanded version, you put so much in that you can lose people, because even for myself sometimes I find like A Taste of Honey quite difficult to read, because there's just so much going on, and sometimes you want a book that's kind of easy to read in a reference, so I can pick this up and it's very easy for me to navigate different parts. And it's because it's like a journal, it's like a self-help book. There's different parts that will naturally even draw you in. So sometimes it's a playlist, sometimes it's the aphrodisiac baths, it's different things, there's different elements, and that's why it's very nice and easy to read. And a lot of the early Muslims that were writing about erotic literature and things like that, their guides were very small as well. Like the
Oh,
Perfume Garden's like 20 pages. So
mhm.
it felt like it was within that tradition rather than writing a full length like documentary book, shall,
Mhm.
shall I say. So I really loved it. The only thing I was thinking is that how come you're not promoting it as much? So because I was wondering, I was thinking actually, are you thinking of working and doing an expanded version or something? So you
Mhm.
did answer my question.
Yes.
So thank you
Yes.
for that. But yeah, like I said, I've got a few copies if anyone's interested, but I definitely would recommend people check out Passage, a 31-day guided journey with the Village Auntie, and hopefully the expanded edition is going to be available in March. And is
Inshallah.
that going to be, inshallah, is that hardback as well? Or is it just going to
Yes.
be a
So
digital?
so this one was spiral bound, but the new copies we want to be hardcover. And I just want to just circle back to something that you said, and you're the first person who ever picked up on it. And of course, you would be the person to pick up on it, mashallah, because you are just a prolific author and researcher, and I just look up to you so much. But my goal was to write it in the style of the early sex manuals and things that came out of our Islamic tradition. So it was not meant to be a long book. And I even got some flack from sisters who were like, oh my gosh, this book is only, 60 pages and she charged $20 for it. But I'm like, but it's not supposed to be an encyclopedia. It's supposed to be a useful tool. And I think a lot of people don't realize, like when you earn ijaza and you get, this Islamic training, the books that you're memorizing, they're not long books. They're very short. Sometimes they're poems. And so I
Yeah.
wanted it to be something that was digestible. So thank you for saying that, because that makes me feel better. Because I felt bad for a while when the book first came out. I had a sister tell me, shame on you for charging $20 for a pamphlet. And I said, but sis, it's so much more than a pamphlet if you only knew. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
No, no, I mean, if I heard that, I would have just ignored it straight away. If it was a message, just delete, block.
Right.
If someone would say it over the phone, I just put my phone down. I haven't got time for people that just come with negative comments.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about the Village Auntie Institute? I know you mentioned that obviously you've got in place in the free. Like, I was wondering what inspired you to, because obviously we did a lot of workshops and seminars. What inspired you to actually now want to establish your own institute?
So I saw the classes starting to grow, and I knew that it was something that was a part of my 5-year plan. But I felt as if now was a good opportunity to do so. And earlier in the year, I had someone who kind of was riding my coattails in terms of some of the work that I was doing. And I needed to be able to break away and institutionalize what it was that I was doing, because I had all of these people who were like following me in my shadow, like several of them trying to find out, how do I do these courses? How do I do this? How do I do that? And I said, okay, I have to have a way that I provide some structure for the classes that I do, so it doesn't just seem like the next fly-by-night online course. And I also wanted to have the audacity, right, to be able to certify other women, because I'm one woman, right? I'm 45 years old. I live in America. There are women in Switzerland and Indonesia and Australia who need this work. Why can't I go about the process of certifying other women to do it? And I said that establishing an institute would be a way to separate myself from the pack of people, who are offering really valuable information online. But I wanted it to be something more than that. So the Village Auntie Institute, we're actually working on our very first physical workshop space in Accra, Ghana. The Rites of Passage program that I have right now, some of the sisters who are in that program will eventually become part of the teaching faculty for the Village Auntie Institute. I do have teaching faculty who are guest instructors for courses. And it was just a way for me to, again, follow in the footsteps of our righteous predecessors, and the fact that the very university on the continent of Africa was founded by a woman. So why can't I do the same? Why can't I give certificates? Why can't I, give out teaching licenses for the work that I'm doing? So that's really where it came about. And someone asked me, so that was my gift to myself for my 45th birthday. And someone close to me said, Angelica, who told you that you had a right to start a school? I said, well, who told me that I couldn't? Like, who's gonna
Mm,
stop me from doing it? And this is
yeah.
this is again continuing in our tradition. So my goal is to have the Village Auntie Institute be a place where a woman can get a 2-year certificate. They can get a master's certification in Kunyaza. They can do all of these things. So then I can replicate the work without having to spread myself too thin.
No, that's amazing. No, that's amazing, mashallah. Because I was actually going to ask, are you planning to train other women? But you answered my question, so that's amazing. And you
Yes.
said you already got a potential workshop in Accra. Did you say in Ghana?
Yes. So I'm working on
Wow.
so I it's actually with my children. So I have a 15-year-old
Mm.
son, and he needed to do community service for school. And I said, what if we did a mobile library? Like, what if we had a bicycle that had like books on the back, and it could go, throughout the Zongo, and, kids could borrow books, and it would be like sort of an honor system, and I could get books donated. And he said, okay, mommy, let's do that. And we would call it the Zongo Reads. So that sort of became a project that we worked on. We developed the plan for it, and then life happened, and then I said, okay, well, let's do it. Let's do it now. So their dad is in Ghana right now, and I told him before he went that I wanted to do this. He's like, okay, no problem. My uncle is on this commission for this town, and so he said, when I go, I'll send you the information, and we can start working on building the space. So inshallah, by summer 2021, it should be ready. And my goal is to take a very, very small group of women, because you cannot take everybody to Africa, because people, you got to get them hip to, like, it's not like America, it's not like Europe. You got to be prepared. But my goal is to take a very small group of women to inaugurate the workshop space. And when I'm not there, I want workshops to be happening. I want women to be able to gather and have, Maulid celebrations. I want there to be Quran classes there. I want it to be a space that's fully functional, not just for me, but also the people in the community.
Mashallah, mashallah. I do have my inner Yoruba voices saying. We are very competitive, and you are of Yoruba descent as well.
Yes.
Why not Nigeria first? Why did you? I love my Ghanaian brothers and sisters. Don't get me wrong. I love my Ghanaian brothers and sisters. Don't get me wrong. But when you was talking, something inside of me was saying, "Hold on, wait. She didn't even go to Nigeria first, and she's a Nigerian woman." Like I don't.
Oh, my people, right? No, so
Yeah. And you've given a
so
couple of workshops. What was it? It's in October. The NCMO. I can't
mhm.
remember the name of the organization. So, and they were. I was
The
speaking to,
Nigerian Council of
and there was.
North Africa. Uh-huh.
They were like, we have to get you back, and this, that, and the other. Because I spoke to some of the husbands, and they were giving me, were asking about you as well. So I'm just wondering, we feel a bit slighted now. I feel slighted. When are you going to
Yeah, no, no,
establish?
no. So the only reason why we went with Ghana first is because that's where my son wanted to do his Zongo Reads project. So the goal is to have the physical workshop space be the place where we sort of house all of the books that get donated. But I said that there are two places that I have to establish workshop space. That is in Nigeria and in Senegal, because those two places have been just such a part of I mean, Nigeria is in my DNA,
Yeah,
as a, a Yoruba woman, right? But
yeah.
also in Senegal. But I've never been to Nigeria, Habib. I have to go. You have
No,
to
you have
like
to
tell
go.
me where to go. I've never
Yeah,
been. I want to go, but yeah. So
yeah.
I'm not slighting my Nigerian people. This is me. Blame it on my son. It's not me. Blame it on my son.
Inshallah, we have to hopefully again, like I said, when the pandemic kind of dies out, and when the part of your first, we need to start your UK tour, and then maybe we can try and see if we can do something in Nigeria. But I know that you're wanted in so many places, so I'm
Yes.
just making sure that UK first gets first dibs if we can. After you do America, and then hopefully we can sort out Nigeria.
Yes.
Can we?
So,
Can I ask a couple of questions? 'Cause I can see some of the
sure.
flashes going up because I've got. Actually, I can't be able to ask all of them, but the first one. Okay. So someone asked, how can you provide some advice on how can I tap into my femininity? So I'm assuming this is a woman.
Hmm. Okay. So femininity is something first that you have to define for yourself. And I'm glad that you brought up Yoruba women, because I was just having a conversation with a dear sister from the UK. I won't say her name because we were having a conversation in a private clubhouse room. And she was commenting that, being a Yoruba women do not fit, and I'm paraphrasing, right? They do not fit a Western concept of femininity, right? Yoruba women are very strong. They will tell you off. They are good business women. They're very intelligent, and they stand in that. And that strength and that purpose is not often seen as being feminine. So I think first, we have to define what femininity is for us, and we have to take the Western gaze off of it. As a woman of African descent, being strong, being purposeful, speaking my mind, even being physically strong, that to me is very feminine because that's what's been modeled to me in spaces. So the first thing is to decide, do you think that femininity means being docile, demure, and soft? Or do you think that it means being intentional? And once you decide that, the easiest way to be more feminine is to surround yourself with women who portray it in the way that you want to live it. So for me, when I was trying to get more in touch with my femininity, I hung around a lot of Senegalese women, right? And they were very powerful, very strong. They were sexually assertive. They were very sensual, and I watched what they did, and I tried to surround myself with them. So I think that helps, having people that you can emulate, and then also not boxing yourself in, because femininity is not one thing to everyone, and understanding how it fits into your life and then proceeding, thusly. Femininity is not, just being soft and quiet. Sometimes it's being very strong and direct.
No, I love that. And would you say that's the same with beauty? Because I know you touched on that on passage when can you touch on that as well about the concept of beauty? Do you mind speaking on that?
Yes, and this is something I've had to go through, and I'm still going through. I'm tall. I've never been dainty. I have been 5'9" since I was 10 years old. I wear a size 11 shoe. I've always been big. I've always taken up a lot of space. But at one point in my life, I was very, very thin, and I modeled, and I thought that was what would give me the self-esteem that I needed, but it wasn't. I definitely fit a certain Western concept of beauty at that time. I was thin, I'm very light, you know, my hair was straightened, but I still did not feel settled in myself. Now, you know, as a woman whose body is completely different than it was before, I feel more beautiful in my body. It's not about how I look, but it's about how I feel and embracing the parts of me that make me different. And that also included shifting my worldview from a Western, European, American centered view of beauty and shifting it to a more African centered lens. I will never forget the very first time that I went to Senegal. I thought I was Beyonce walking through the streets. I mean, and I could look raggedy walking through the streets, but women, men, you know, they were like, oh, you're so tall. So being tall wasn't a bad thing. When I go to Ghana, they're like, oh, Angelica, you know, oh, you're fat now. You're very fat. Oh, this is good. You look, you know, you look nice. And just being affirmed in that way. I think it's very important for us to have different perspectives to look from, because if we only look at Instagram and social media, it only purports one specific type of beauty. So shifting that lens for me really helped, because there are a lot of cultures that prize women who have bodies like me, who look like me, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that, you know, what we perceive as imperfections can actually be seen as desirable qualities depending on what perspective we're looking at it from.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. That is, you actually answered another question I was going to answer, so that's fine. That covers that. Okay. So another question I have, I've actually received a number of questions with similar theme. Um, I'm, how can older unmarried women protect themselves from zina, fornication, besides masturbation? How can
Hmm.
they preserve their chastity?
So first, I want to say that sisters should stop feeling so bad about masturbation. You know, I've tried to move away from talking about masturbation publicly, but I'm just going to say it. We're the only ones, like men don't get the same kind of flack about masturbation. And we know that brothers are like handling their business. So sisters, just stop being so hard on yourself about masturbation. It's a natural reaction. I'm not encouraging you to do it. I'm not encouraging you not to do it. I'm saying stop shaming yourself for it. But when it comes to protecting yourself from zina, you have to protect yourself from those sources of temptation. So curate your feed, sis. Like if you got, you know, feeds that show you Senegalese wrestlers in one, and you know, Nigerian brothers in their London suits in the other. Like you gotta watch, you know what I'm saying? You have to watch, like, you know, stay off my page if those are gonna titillate you. Stay off Habib's page. Like keep following us, but like curate
Yeah.
what you're consuming, because we see it in music, we hear it in music, we see it in television shows, we see it on social media, we see it in movies. Everything is about sex. So you know, it's natural, especially if you're a sexually mature woman, to want to have it. So really try to put yourself on a diet and focus on those things that are pleasurable, but not necessarily sexual, so that you can satisfy it without venturing into that which is haram. Thank you, dear. Can you show it to me after? Thank you.
Okay.
That's my 5-year
Um,
old. He always comes talking.
and how does an inexperienced Muslim woman develop confidence to please her husband in the bedroom?
So, and this is not just because I'm talking to you, Habib, but I tell every person that asks me this that they need to buy A Taste of Honey. They just need to get that book. Yes, it is thick. Yes, it is dense, but it is literally, for every instance, there is a chapter. For every situation, there's a chapter. So that's the first place, is to educate yourself. And the reason why I recommend A Taste of Honey is because it has religious references in the book, and it shows that your sexuality and your spirituality do not have to be separate. I also recommend looking into the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he was a man who loved his Lord, and he also loved women. He's not just an example for men, he's an example for women too. So for an inexperienced Muslim woman, educate yourself and find spaces with sisters, whether it's me, whether it's, you know, sisters in your community. Ask questions. I think we just assume that a lot of sisters won't answer our questions, or they'll think like we're, you know, too lascivious and loose to be asking about things like that. But if you are planning to get married, You want to have the best sex possible, sis, because you get one husband. So you need to find out what it is that's going to please you and what's also going to please him. So start by educating yourself first. Don't turn to pornography, because that's the wrong direction to go to. And don't ask your friends who are inexperienced, because they also do not know. But read books and ask people who do know. Find that couple in the masjid where they've been married for 60 years. Trust me, that sister got some tricks. She knows something. So find her and ask her, and just be comfortable knowing that sex is a part of worship in Islam. And if we approach our prayer, we work on expanding our prayer. We work on what to say when we go into sujood, memorizing longer surahs. When we give charity, we want to make sure that we're giving, the best possible charity. So look at sex in that same aspect. How can I make it as enriching and fulfilling as possible for me and my spouse?
No, I love that. I love that. And I love what you said about reading the Sirah, because I think that's something that I think when you read like the Sirah and the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and even the early communities as well, I think it would change people's attitudes and perspective in terms of what it means to be religious and spiritual, because they were sexually empowered men and sexually empowered women. There were women that were asking for their rights in the bedroom. There were women that were even divorcing men because their husband wasn't able to fulfill their desires, and they weren't shamed. And that's something that, again, I think that because I hear that a lot, of that, oh, this woman, she can't ask this question because she's religious. What does that mean? As if you can't be religious and sensual at the same time. And that's something that I think we do need. A lot of it, I know it comes from cultural understanding, but we do need to change that mindset. And I think the first point is obviously starting with the Prophet ﷺ and the men and women that are around him, because when people see that the best of
Upstairs.
people, they didn't have this issue like in terms of asking their rights in the bedroom, because these were God-given rights. And I think that's why we need to definitely empower, because a lot of men, we don't have this issue. We don't have this hang up in terms of asking for our rights in the bedroom. Whereas, unfortunately, with women, our Muslim sisters, they have that, where they think that they can't ask this because in order for them to be pious and religious, and I just saw a TED talk as well recently, and I forgot the name of the woman. I think she says something along the lines of that, and it can apply with Muslims. She said, "Men are socialized to be brave, whereas women are socialized to be perfect." And she was explaining that, and it hit home so much on so many levels, even in the Muslim community, because even as a man, because if you're socialized to be brave and courageous, that means you're allowed to make mistakes. Whereas women, we don't allow women to make mistakes. So the Muslim woman has to be the quote unquote ideal Muslim woman. She doesn't speak out of turn. She's just been married once. She hasn't been divorced. She hasn't done all of it, which is kind of seen as a flaw. She never speaks out of turn. She never even raises her voice. Whereas a man, I'm talking about even within the Muslim communities that we've created, we're allowed to make mistakes. And this even goes with like speakers, scholars, what have you. And we're expected to make mistakes. And when we make a mistake and we overcome it, then we can even sell some more books or workshops and this, that, and the other, and we're praised for it. Whereas with a woman, if she makes any slight mistake, because she's expected to be perfect, and that's a ridiculous, level to maintain. It's not if you have to achieve perfection, you have to maintain perfection just to not even stay in the public eye, just to continue to be a Muslim. Whereas as a man, we don't have that pressure. And that's something that when I was listening to that TED talk, it hit home for so many levels, because I thought, yeah, even as a man, you don't have, everyone has crises of faith or where their iman drops on somewhat. But it's not like a case of where you feel, in many cases, I'm not a Muslim anymore. Whereas because we don't give that same freedom for women, it's like if a woman not even takes off a hijab, if a strand of hair is showing and people's going to comment, and all of a sudden I'm not a Muslim anymore, and that's a problem. But when you read, and that's why I loved what you said about reading about the Sirah and the early Muslims. You saw different characters of both men and women that were both struggling, but they were all committed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They all had the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's something that we forget about, because we just want to speak about the perfect women and the imperfect men. And that's something that I think we need to kind of have more of those examples. But I know it's even difficult, and that's why I do always, sing your praises, and because I know it's difficult even for you to be in the limelight, because there's a lot of women that need to see a human Muslim woman with all her frailties and imperfections, but still inspiring and teaching people. So that's why I just think we do need to kind of read the final, or have a new understanding of what it means to be religious and spiritual, especially within, first within obviously the Muslim community, and then obviously also with for non-Muslims as well, that they can understand that just because you are committed to a faith, it doesn't mean you're this perfect human being, because perfection lies with God Almighty, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I definitely loved what you said about the seerah, and I think that's definitely something that we should definitely read more about to learn about the early Muslim communities.
That's
Okay.
good. Juma came early. Habib gave
No,
us a whole khutbah. No, that's good. It's, you know, and it's
no,
so refreshing to hear a man say it. I can say it, but it hits differently when you say it. And just acknowledging that double standard, even in the work that I do. I'm intentional about how I dress and appear on my feed, right? There might be sometimes I might want to, you know, wear an outfit with a grand boo or some Nigerian lace and have a gele tied a certain way. But then I get people saying, "Oh, Sister Angelica, your neck is showing." So the bar is set very high for me. And then I think what winds up happening is when women are faced with this double standard, they start to question their nature. So I have several couples where the woman will come to me and say that they have a problem in the marriage. And the problem is that her libido is higher than her husband, or she's more adventurous than her husband, or she wants to experiment with, you know, different positions and sex toys and things. And she's like, "What's wrong with me?" And it's so hard to untangle that thinking, because I'm like, "Sis, there's nothing
nothing wrong
wrong
with
with."
you.
But she's just, you know, it's expected that he's supposed to be the aggressor. But what we don't understand is that, one, sex shouldn't be aggressive.
Mhm.
Two, it's perfectly okay for a woman to be sexually assertive, but I feel like we have squeezed all the joy out of sex in Muslim marriages, and that's one of the reasons why the divorce rate is so high.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Even, I mean, coming to the sexual assertiveness, I've again within a Muslim context, I've never really understood why so many people find it problematic if a woman initiates any form of sexual activity, when the example we have in the Quran of sexual initiation comes from a woman, the Prophet
Mm-hmm.
Yusuf alayhi salam. So this idea of women not having desires, women aren't able to initiate sex, women aren't captivated by beauty and things like that. The only example we actually have in the Quran is of a woman trying to initiate something. So and even the women of the city. So it wasn't just that one woman; it was women of the city that were captivated by the beauty of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. So again, for me, I'm just wondering, where are we? Because again, I think maybe people's upbringing or their understanding about Islam has come from somewhat of a, obviously the people that are teaching them, they kind of maybe not speaking about those stories. Because if you read those stories, if you read the seerah like you spoke about earlier, you will see these examples of sexually empowered women that were still committed to their Lord. That still loved Allah. They still had faith. So you won't have this issue that you think, "Oh, am I still a Muslim? Do I still have faith?" Do you understand what I'm getting at? Whereas as a man, a lot of us, we don't question that. So even if
Never.
you have, because you see examples and you can think of those examples that, "Oh, I can relate to this companion or this person that went through a similar struggle, or this person that drank alcohol, but they still had the love of Allah in his heart." So because we don't see enough of those or hear enough of those examples of women, again, I'm talking about imperfect, flawed women, as we all are. That's why I think people are just looking at the perfection. And even in those, the best of women, like Asya and Maryam, they both had struggles. So
Absolutely.
it's not like if you're going to be perfect, you can't, Allah's not going to put you in the form of a test. But it's
Mm-hmm.
how it's, and a lot of the work is, I think, is from within. But I think,
And it,
unfortunately, yeah, we have put the bar so high, or set the standard so high for women that, yeah, for me, I just find it very difficult to understand, because obviously I'm allowed to make like mistakes. I know I'm allowed to make mistakes, if that makes sense. And I
mm-hmm.
can't understand living in a body where I'm not allowed to make mistakes, even with my own community, because they're going to
Mm-hmm.
question my womanhood or my Islam, because I've done X, Y, and Z wrong. When in reality, if I'm making a mistake, it's only against myself. It's my relationship between God Almighty is the most important thing. What if it's not affected? If I haven't done you wrong, then I don't see why. But again, I can go off on a tangent of that, so I'm going to kind of go back to the question.
Okay.
Sorry.
But 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 it's good. And someone made the comment that, you know, in that context, the women were made to feel as if they were sinning by trying to seduce Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. And I think that that's the way it's taught, but that does not have to be the way that it's interpreted, right? He's resisting temptation, but there's nothing sinful about being desirous. There's nothing sinful
Mm,
about witnessing beauty. And even if we look at the relationship between our mother Khadija radiallahu anha and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She didn't just see him one day. Like, it was a while. She was clocking him for a while. Like, oh, okay. And it was, as a woman, I know it was not just because he was an honorable man. We read about his description, and he was a beautiful man, mashallah. So what I just don't understand why we just compartmentalize Islam and we reduce it to rules and regulations rather than this story with such depth and breadth about the human experience and how these people have had real lives. Like they have had real lives. They were real people going through real circumstances that even mirror the time that we live in right now.
Yeah, and I think it's where the stories are taught because, so for example, the story of the woman and Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam, Zuleika, I think that she's called. The way it's taught is, yes, like the sister said. But then if you hear another story the other way around of like the man who wanted to sleep with, I think it was his cousin, and then at the last minute he retracted, and then he asked Allah for forgiveness, and he was. But the way that's told is that he gave her money, he wanted to commit zina, she was even saying fear Allah, but then he realized, he stopped, and then he asked for forgiveness. He's all of a sudden the hero.
Mm.
Do you understand what I'm getting at? So
yeah, exactly.
it's just so that's why I mean, yes. I mean, we can't. I mean, we can't change the world or the culture overnight. But I think that's why it's important that people, especially Muslims as well, Muslim women, are empowered with knowledge, and then they can see. You've got access to the Quran. You've got access to these stories, and you can see these examples. Don't rely or don't wait for the scholars or the intellectuals, the speakers, because they're only going to tell you the stories that resonate with them. That's what people need to realize. So I'm not saying it's right, but it's not surprising that you won't hear a lot of the stories of the sexually empowered women from the early Muslim community. You're not going to hear about men saying about, if you don't fulfill your rights in the bedroom, she can divorce you. They don't want to say that. But if it's the other way around, they will relate those stories. That's why it's important that, especially the day we're living in now, that we've got access to knowledge, that we just kind of like not only empower ourselves, but then obviously highlight the works of people like what you're doing. So people have got an example that they can kind of like listen to and hear about some of our pious predecessors. Okay, I'm just conscious of time because I think if we can maybe have another 10 minutes and then I'll stop so that I can save this, because I think we've got an hour. And then if you don't mind, if we can do another like 45 minutes, if that's all right with you.
That's fine.
I didn't realize how this was. If you had almost 50 minutes. Oh, this is actually a question that cheekily I wrote that I wanted to ask you. I was thinking that's my question. Yeah. So if you was going to write a biography, what would you call it?
My biography?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, what would I call it?
That's a good question, isn't it?
That's a really good question.
You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but I just think because you're doing so much.
I have to really think about it. I will say, it's so interesting how so much of my life, looking back, we always say that, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans. We plan and Allah plans. And it's so interesting to see how Allah has shaped my life, because the incident that sort of led me down the road to studying sexual health and African women's healing modalities happened in April of 1998, right? I had this, you know, situation at a dance class. A Senegalese sister told me I need a kinkli bati to heal my uterus. And I was like, what are you talking about? And, you know, I've talked about that before. That was in April of 1998. And I had been studying Islam since August of 1994. So April of 1998, this incident happens. And then August of 1998, I take my Shahada. So it's literally like the path to becoming the village auntie and the path to being a Muslim were literally 4 months apart.
Wow.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I would call my biography "It Was Destined." I remember.
And who? Go on.
No, my mom's a clinical psychologist, and when she was studying for her PhD, I remember reading her biology and anatomy books and just being so enamored with the human body, such that I could name all of the parts of the male reproductive system when I was like 8 years old. So maybe it was destined.
And who would play you in a feature-length film if I was going to make a film about your life?
Who
Who
would
would you
play
want to
me?
play you? Yeah.
Oh, that's easy. I'm going to pronounce her name wrong. She was in Hotel Rwanda. Sophie Okonedo.
Ocon. Yeah, I think she's
Yeah.
British. She's actually a
Yes.
really good actor. Yeah. Okay. She's Gatchel.
I
So yeah.
love her,
Okay.
and she would do me justice, I think.
Okay. No, that was selfish of me. Now getting back to people's
But
questions.
that's a good question. Nobody's ever asked us. All right.
I wanted to ask you a different question because I've seen obviously so many of your lives and your podcasts, and I was like, I want to ask you a different question. I don't want to ask you the same questions that you probably heard a number of times. No disrespect to people that are sending these questions. Okay, do you have what was it?
Yes, she was on
How
Orange is the New Black, I think. Somebody said from Orange is the New Black. Yes, her. I think. Yes, her. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Habib.
sorry, I'm so rude. I've not actually been paying attention to any of the comments. There's been a number of comments anyway. How to overcome mental block when your man does all the right things? So I think someone's asking how can they overcome a mental block when their husband is doing all the right things. I'm assuming emotionally and physically. So maybe it's someone else.
So the husband is so basically the issue is not coming from him. The issue is internal
Uh,
within the.
yeah.
So I think it's important for us to acknowledge that sometimes we make our partners pay for what other people have done to us, whether that was in our childhood or in previous relationships. And we also expect our partners to be mind readers. So in that instance, the first thing would be communication, but not communication with the husband, communication with yourself, and really acknowledging where's the source of this pain and understanding that not all pain is trauma. I think trauma has become the new buzzword where people think that all pain is trauma, and it's not. Trauma is something that can alter and transform your life. Pain is temporal, right? So sometimes we take pain and we turn it into trauma because we just don't want to let it go. So a lot of the emotional blockages that we have are because we're holding on to pain that was never meant to stay with us. So doing a personal inventory. In my book, I have an exercise called Fears and Assets. So it's basically, and it's meant to do exactly that, to help with emotional blockages. What am I afraid of? What is it that's holding me back? And then on the other side, what do I have? What do I possess emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically that can help me mitigate those fears? So I think communication with self is important, and then also looking at the ways that those emotional blockages are manifesting in your life, because sometimes the pain can be so deep and so heavy that it can manifest in things like vaginismus, where it's an inability to be penetrated or penetration is extremely painful. Then that's where your negative thoughts are manifesting into sexual dysfunction. Now, I'm not saying that that is the only cause for vaginismus, so please don't take it as that's what I'm saying. That is one specific thing that can happen. That's one very small cause of issues like vaginismus. So I would also think communicating with the husband, since he is doing things well, is also very helpful, because support anytime we're working through emotional difficulties is important. And if you have a supportive partner, then that supportive partner can then affirm the internal work that you're already doing, and they can sort of keep motivating you to keep going.
Jazakallah khairan. That's beautiful. Thank you. I'm just sorry. I'm keep looking because I'm just conscious of the time. I'm going to save this. Are you
Okay.
happy to do like another 45 minutes after this?
Sure. This is the only thing on my calendar for today, so we're
thank you,
good.
thank you. Just I've got a number of messages. Make sure you save this. It's like I'm being told off, so I want to make sure I save this and
Save
then
it.
like give me a 5 minutes. I'll be back in it, inshallah.
Okay,
Okay.
inshallah.
How do I save this now? Because don't do the wrong thing live.
So I
Do you know how
think
to save this?
yeah. So once you end it, it's going to give you the option to save video. So once you
Oh,
close
okay.
out, it'll give you the option to
Yeah.
save video and post to your IGTV. And once you do that, it takes like a couple minutes, but then it'll upload it, inshallah.
Okay, so just I'm going to be saving this IG live, and then I'll be back UK time. You say 10:02, so in like 5 minutes. Okay,
Okay.
I'll see you shortly, inshallah.
Okay. Sound good.
Excellent. Good evening. Welcome to part two with Sister Angelica Lindsey-Ali, also known as the Village Auntie, the Queen of Kunyaza, the Orgasm Oracle. So we're going to be hopefully joined by Sister Angelica soon. For those of you who are joining, Sister Angelica is a intimacy expert based in the United States. She's also a relationship coach, an author, a published speaker, the founder of the Village Auntie Institute. She provides one-to-one counseling and workshops and seminars to women, both Muslim women and non-Muslim women of different ages, to help them understand sensuality, female sensuality from an Islamic and African, traditional African perspective. And we were speaking we're speaking about quite a few things on the first part, and hopefully this second part I'm going to try and answer some of the more questions and speak to the Village Auntie more about maybe some of our upcoming plans in the year ahead. I'm just waiting for Sister Angelica to join. I think she's here. I was trying to go through some of your questions. Oh, she's back. Alhamdulillah. Did you take a drink? Did you get a drink or something to have a break?
No, I just gave cookies to my son.
Okay. I'll be honest, I had a live, I went on someone's live a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to cream my lips. So someone's messaging me like, look at your lips are so dry. So I was thinking of that. I was thinking of that halfway through this. I was looking, my lips dry because I know my lips are pink. So I was thinking, yeah, are they dry? So that's another reason I wanted to have a quick glass of water. I've got some Vaseline, just make sure that they don't look too ashy.
That's the most African thing. You see yourself?
You see yourself, yeah. In the back of my mind, I was like, don't disgrace the family name. Don't disgrace the family name.
Oh my gosh. Habib, I did get a few messages from sisters on WhatsApp and inbox messages, DMs about A Taste of Honey. They want to know, is it available digitally for sisters who may be in a location where they can't get a hard copy delivered?
Unfortunately, it's not. Yeah, I was thinking actually whether to put it on. Actually, I'll be honest. I don't think I'm going to just. It's not available at the moment, but I'm thinking whether I should put it convert it to like an ebook. But I'm not too sure yet. Kunyaza is, but unfortunately, A Taste of Honey isn't. But I probably need to think about whether I'm going to do that or not. Just because I like a hard copy. And another thing is that with a number of Muslim organizations, when you've got a digital book that's Islamic related, they will then just give it away for free. And with my first book, what someone did, a couple of people did, they actually photocopied my first book, Illuminating the Darkness, and they were selling it that way. So I was just thinking, because obviously when they photocopied it, that's why I was like, to be honest, I prefer like to have the hard copy, because I know if I were to convert it and sell it digitally, then people would just start distributing it for free. And someone actually was trying to give me a lecture saying that, it's beneficial knowledge and Islamic knowledge, so it should be available for free and this, that, and that. I was like, I'll put in a lot of years into that. I'm not giving it away for free. I said, a lot of the stuff you can find it online, but
better reception.
So
No, don't make it an ebook.
I probably won't put it on ebook, but maybe my next one I might do that.
I also think A Taste of Honey works better as a physical book because it's like a dictionary or an encyclopedia. Like it's something you have to keep going back to. You can't just read it once all at one time. Like you really need to like take it in doses. And I don't think that's easy to do with an ebook. So
yeah. And I think there's something, for me anyway, something special when you've got a hard copy of a book. It just feels, and especially if you're using it as like a reference guide or whatever, to me, I just prefer, I don't know. But with maybe my next book, I might put in an ebook, but unfortunately, Taste of Honey is not available as an ebook. And then now that my lips aren't dry, they don't look so ashy, we can go to the... I'm not going to lie, that was in the back of my mind. I was worried about it.
It wasn't. You were fine. I would have told you. I would have sent you a time.
I'm not gonna lie. I would have deleted the first part for the first video if it was. I just said, no, no, you know, listen, no one's gonna watch that anymore. Okay, so the next question. Sorry, what was that? What makes one lose interest in sex?
So asexuality is a thing. There are people who are asexual. They do not crave any type of physical sexual activity. And that's perfectly fine, right? That's a sexual orientation, right? People who are asexual. But if you have been a sexual person and you start to lose interest in sex, that always, to me, signals that there is a mental health issue that you have to deal with. It could also be an issue with nutrition. So depression, anxiety, PTSD, these are all causes of lack of sexual interest. Also, the type of food that you eat. You know, if you're eating heavily processed, overly fried, heavily sugared food, it can make it difficult to, you know, to feel amorous. So I would check what you're eating and what you're consuming mentally as well. It could also be a hormonal imbalance. I am perimenopausal, and I can, you know, I can say that in my studies about menopause, that's also a concern. It's usually the opposite, though. Once you hit menopause, your libido sort of spikes, but generally it's something that is either psychological or physical in some way.
Okay, I've got another question. This one is a bit of a long one, so sorry, you have to bear with me. So I have a question for the sister. Having children makes it so hard to even communicate with my husband. Our evenings consist of putting the children to bed and me very often falling asleep with the baby. I feel we have distanced and we argue such a lot and irritate each other. Does the sister have any advice or tips to get a healthy balance? We both work, so our families already babysit a lot for us, so we don't really want to put on them more, so we can have our time together. By the way, I have four. My children are 4 and 1. So yes, that's. I think she's. Yeah. It's basically. I think she's. Any advice and tips on how she can communicate and maybe spice up her marital life with 2 children.
I have good advice for that because I have 4
Okay.
children. You have to prioritize your marriage. You have to stop thinking of yourselves as parents first. That is not popular, especially in 2020, especially in a lot of Islamic communities where you take on the name. Like for me, I would be Suleiman, right? But I'm not just Suleiman. I'm also a woman. I'm a woman first. And we have to prioritize our marriages over our role as caretakers. Why? Because the children come out of the relationship. So when the children are born and then you just abandon the relationship, and I'm not saying that this person is abandoning the relationship. I'm using, you know, extreme examples. But if you just abandon the relationship, then the children no longer have that foundation which they were brought into. And it affects the children, it affects the whole structure of the family. And Esther Perel, who is a Belgian psychologist and sex therapist, has talked about this, how a lot of times we replace that tactile intimacy that we would once get from our spouse with children. So, you know, if I'm breastfeeding, for example, I go to work all day, I come home, I'm breastfeeding my child, I'm playing with the child, we may do some co-sleeping. That's great, but I also need to have physical space with my partner. So it means prioritizing. Now, I know that in some cultures, that's not considered to be appropriate. But at some point, these children are going to grow up and leave, and you're going to have to be with your spouse. Are you going to have this 18-year-old gap where you just put a pause on your relationship? No. So this is what I did, and this is what I would suggest. You have to set some schedules and some structure in your life. If you are working and you have children who are 4 and 1, my children were 3 and 1. So there's a 2-year age difference between them for both sets of children. You have to send those kids to bed. Do not let them sleep in your bed forever. I let my youngest, co-sleep for a while. Put the children to bed. Have date night at home. Date night does not have to be going out to a restaurant. It could be, let's watch this Netflix show together. Let's have dinner together. Make sure that at least 3 nights per week, you all are having at least one meal together. Make sure you are praying together. Make sure that you are communicating throughout the day. I'm a huge fan of sexting. Listen, sis, that's your husband. You can send him those pictures. You know, hopefully y'all not having any problems and he won't leak the pictures, but you can, you know, be creative, be sensual. Foreplay does not just start in the bedroom, but you have to prioritize your marriage. I see this happen with a lot of couples. As soon as they start having babies, all of the excitement gets out of the relationship. And there is a way to have that balance. You can have a sexy marital life and still be a good mother by being a complete person that helps you to be a better parent. And one of the ways that we find completion is through experiencing interaction with other human beings. And why not let that human being be your husband?
Lovely. Another question, does size matter? I'm sure that I'm sure you're
Let me drink some water. Oh, Lord.
The person who sent that question, they might be having some insecurity that you're laughing at them now.
Well, no, I'm laughing because
I'm joking.
I knew. So you're the only man that I can talk about like sex and things like that publicly with, and even privately, because we're two professionals, right? And there's no shame, but I was like, I know that people are going to see me and Habib and they're going to ask some off the wall questions. So this is one of them. Does size matter? Yes and no. So I did a video about this that I actually got into trouble for because a brother said it was too sexual. It's a video where I used cucumber, squash, a carrot, and a jalapeno to talk about sex. And it was really a video about male body positivity. Size can matter. So if your husband has a micro penis, right? So if it's very small when it's erect, it can be a problem because sometimes you just want to feel your man inside of you, right? And you know,
what fruit is that? Is that the jalapeno?
That's the jalapeno.
Yeah, that video was
That's
hilarious.
the jalapeno. But let me tell you, the jalapeno got so much love after that video. Sisters were sending me messages and said, sis, I had a man who was a cucumber and he did not know what to do with it. But I had a man who had a jalapeno and he rocked my world. It is my professional opinion that length and girth, so length and width, do not matter as much as technique. Because if his stroke game is whack, it's like having a Maserati and you don't know how to drive. Like, you know, if you just getting on top and you're doing the jackhammer, being able to have some type of technique with the stroke, understanding the female, you know, genitalia, all of those things to me are more important than size. I think that a lot of women who've never had sex before, by the way, say, well, my man has to be packing. He has to have, you know, that's why they say, oh, I want to get an African man. I want to get a Caribbean man because, you know, they're packing. First of all, that's a lie. Second of all, it's not that the size of their genitalia. It's that in certain cultures, you know, let's look at men who come from the islands, right? You see a man dancing a soca and he's winding his waist. You can pretty much tell how he's going to get down in the bedroom. These are things that are indicative of technique, right? So technique is more important than size. That is my professional and personal opinion. So brothers who are not as well endowed, work on your stroke game and make sure that it's the complete package, because penetrative vaginal sex also, I'm just going to say it can also be boring. So you have to have more tricks in your toolbox than just a big penis.
Lovely. Okay, so any advice on getting on, sorry, this question is not worded. Any advice on getting on the guilty, embarrassed feeling pre and post intimacy? Sure. No, sorry, this was linked to the previous question. I didn't, I'm just literally reading how it was written, but I didn't understand exactly what. Any advice on getting on the guilty, embarrassed feeling pre and post intimacy?
Let me tell
you, maybe
something.
Getting over. Yeah.
Let me say this to women: stop talking bad about your body. Stop thinking poorly about your body when you are intimate. Sis, I don't care what size you are. You could be a size 4, you could be a size 14, you could be a size 24. If you are naked in a room with a man who loves you, with a man who is committed to you, he already knows what you look like, sis. Get over this idea that men do not like fupas, men do not like, sag and this and that. Some men like that. And even if all men don't like it, your man must like it because he's in the bed with you. Stop feeling embarrassed. That is the one place that you have to explore. We can be, I am buttoned up and tightened up in every aspect of my life. I'm a program director. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a mother. I need a space in my life to be buck wild. Sis, take that space in your life to be buck wild. Why would you be ashamed of it? Oh, what will my parents think? If your parents are in the room watching you have sex, you got bigger problems. Stop worrying about what people think. Like, and
100%.
I get it. Body positivity is not easy. We can look at our bodies and say, oh my gosh, I have stretch marks. I have this, I have that. If you don't love your body, especially in 2020 when we've lost so many people, love the body that you have and embrace it. And this idea that we should be ashamed of something that is a very natural act by which most human beings were created is beyond me. So just think about it as that. Think about it as you engaging in an act of worship that is very natural, that is very appropriate, and that is also very fun.
And I would just say, I'm going to plug Village Auntie's book again. Read and buy Passage. It's got, I think, 2 chapters on self-love and body positivity and what you spoke about in terms of your experiences in Senegal. And there's some ayahs as well. And there's some examples of where you can use positive affirmations and things like that to kind of help you kind of love yourself. So definitely I would plug the book again to make sure you read that.
And I'll put the link to download Passage. I'll put it back in my bio after this live, so people can go click the link in the bio when this live is finished to purchase it.
So with the, I know you mentioned with the upcoming course in that you're doing with the Institute in January is on storytelling. Are you doing an intimacy course anytime soon for women?
Yes, so I'm going to do a course on seduction, and it's going to be specifically looking at jonge, which is like the Senegalese, art of seduction. It can even be expanded because there's lots of commonalities in West Africa. So we're going to talk about, waist beads, the use of traditional forms of what I would call lingerie, what in Nigeria they call it kayen mata, the aphrodisiacs. So we're going to talk about that as well. Yeah. And it's all going to be rooted in this idea of building internal self-confidence. So it's going to be a course on basically how to seduce your man. I tell sisters all the time, if you ever want to spice up your relationship, you get a becho. Bechos are like these very loosely crocheted skirts. Get a becho. Get a thong that matches it. And when your husband comes home, just be like cooking dinner, like washing the dishes with just like a thong and some high heels and a becho on. If that doesn't turn him on, nothing will. And then if he says, what is this? Say, well, what do you mean? What is this? This is nothing. I'm just be very nonchalant about it. It's about boosting that self-confidence, but not being too eager and too thirsty. So we're going to have a workshop, a 4-hour workshop on that. So that's going to be that intimacy course. And then I'm struggling with it, and perhaps you can help me with this, but I've had lots of requests, not just from the Muslim community, but from all communities for kunyaza. And that's one of my favorite workshops to teach, but I'm struggling with how to do it virtually, because before now it's only been something that I've done in person, because we actually cover positioning and things too. So I'm trying to figure out a way to do it so that people can't like screen record me or anything, doing things. But if I'm able to figure out a way to deliver it virtually, I do want to start doing kunyaza workshops.
I've got a funny story about kunyaza, reminded me of that. But before I get onto that, in the jonge course, are you also going to be covering orgasm, since obviously you're the orgasm oracle? And I remember you mentioned on your podcast about the 15 routes to orgasm. Is that going to be covered also in?
Yes.
Okay,
and it's going to be covered because I also want to cover a piece in there about women who have undergone, I want it to be inclusive. So I want women who have undergone female genital mutilation or female genital cutting, where the clitoris has either been snipped or removed. I also want to give them tools for activating that sensual power. And so in the 15 routes to orgasm, there are several that are not centered around the clitoris. So we're absolutely going to talk about that.
Lovely. Fantastic. So I'll get to my kunyaza story. I was actually
Oh,
going
so
to
I
ask you,
think
that was one of
somebody
the
said,
questions.
what is kunyaza?
Yeah, so what is kunyaza?
Someone asked that.
No, I'm asking you.
You're
I'm
asking
doing, I'm the
me?
interviewer. Yeah, I'm the interviewer.
Kunyaza is an ancient African art of female ejaculation. So kunyara is the female ejaculate fluid. So it is, to explain it in brief, it is the rhythmic tapping of the labia and the clitoris to elicit female ejaculation, or what we in the West would call squirting.
Okay, so my kunyaza story. So this was, I think, this was 2 weeks ago. So I do get a number of, obviously, messages and DMs about kunyaza. So someone messaged me and they were like, "Do you teach kunyaza?" And I was just like, "Yes, I do, but I haven't got any workshops going." And he was like, "Have you got any workshops going?" And I've just said I haven't got any workshops coming up. And then he was like, "Okay, are you going to do any virtual workshops?" And I said, "I don't think so, but I might, maybe early next year." And then he was like, "Could I speak to you?" And this is by Instagram. I was looking at my phone thinking, "I'm speaking to you now. What's the problem?" He's like, "No, can I speak to you over the phone?" So I was a bit irritated. So I was like, he said, "Can I speak to you over the phone?" I don't know this guy from Adam. And I'm like, "I'm not going to give you my number." So I said, "You can call me via Skype." So anyway, he called me via Skype about 20 minutes later. And then he was asking me the same question: "Do you teach kunyaza?" I said, "Yes, I do teach kunyaza." Do you teach any workshops?" "I do, but I'm not doing any now at the moment." "Do you do virtual workshops?" Asking me the same questions. And I was thinking, what's wrong with this guy? And he was like, "I've got a brother. I need some advice. I need some advice. I need you to teach me kunyaza." I was like, "Okay." And then he was like, "Do you do private teaching?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "I'll pay." I was like, "I'm not." I was like, I'm fine." And then I was like, what are you looking for? Because I do workshops. We teach you how, I can show you how it works and things like that. He said, basically, "I need you to come to my place and I want you to do kunyaza on my wife so I can learn." And I was like, it's not that, honestly, I was like, it's not that kind of
It's
party.
kunyaza, not cuckolding.
Yes.
Oh!
And he was saying, I was like, "Where did you get that from?" And he was like, "You said you're a sex educator, you teach people how to do kunyaza." And I was like, "No, it's not that type of party." And then he said, because there's another person, I'm not going to say his name, who teaches squirting. And a number of people teach squirting and they call themselves sex educators. That's how they teach it. They actually they either do it by two ways. They either sleep with the woman and then like cuckolding and the man watches and they say, "This is how you make love. Or they ask the couple to make love to each other and they're watching and then they're writing notes and they say, "This is what you need to do." So that's why I was thinking I might need to change I might need to change the sex education to something else because, and I've received actually a couple of those messages where people have asked to actually teach it, like, and I was like even some when I did my last workshop earlier this year in January, people was asking myself and my co-host whether we're actually going to actually show people how. It's like, no, it's not that type of party.
They
So
thought it was like a
unfortunately,
sex show?
yeah, I did, yeah, you do get that. So that's why I would say, yeah, you have to kind of be careful with the,
Yeah,
because as soon as you put squirting and especially if it's going to be, yeah, and especially because someone can record it, because there was someone from Kenya who was teaching women how to squirt, but he does a workshop, but not actually live with the women. But then someone was filming it and they put it up on Pornhub and these type of websites.
See,
So that's why again,
that's
yeah. So that's why I
a
was just going to say you have
huge
to be very,
fear.
yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah. That's
that's
kind
it.
of,
Yeah,
yeah.
no. I don't even know what to say.
I was dumbfounded, but I was just laughing. I was just like, wow. Anyway, but I thought that story was quite funny. Sorry, I didn't mean to upset you.
No, it's funny. I just can't, like, people are people are a lot.
Yeah,
People
you
are.
know, it's because you have people doing that. That's what I realized. So then I wasn't aware of it, but I didn't realize that there are prominent people that have been featured in mainstream media outlets. And they obviously they self entitled or they call themselves maybe like sex educator, not kunyaza, sorry, squirting, whatever expert, and that's how they teach. There's a
So
couple
the
of people in
first time that I
particular.
did a Kunyaza workshop with people who were not like personal friends, like, and it wasn't a workshop when I'm just teaching my personal friends, like, oh, tell them to do this, do this, do this. I
Mm,
actually did it at my sister-in-law's house, and her friends came, and one of the women came. So I was demonstrating positions, like, a good starting position for, practicing Kunyaza. And she was like, oh, good, because I wore my pretty panties today. And I was like, sis, I that's good. I'm an advocate of wearing pretty panties every day. However, I won't see them. She's like, oh, she said, I didn't know, because, and she said, I've gone to classes where there were all women, but they actually like did demonstrations in the class. I was like, that's not, we stay fully clothed in
mm,
class. But that's one of my biggest fears, because I know that women in hijab are a huge fetish on sites like
yeah.
Pornhub and, all these other sites. So that's I really want to teach more. I want to teach more women about Kunyaza, but I also want to start to certify women to teach Kunyaza. But I can't.
Mm.
You just affirmed that I can't do it virtually. I
It's
can't.
yeah. I mean, even as a man, that's why I don't really like to do and as well because with the Kunyaza workshops, I want to obviously make sure people understand about the ethics and the understanding that the ancients and Africans had about sex. That it's sacred. It's not like a performance trick. It's not something a form of sexual applause. So that's why I know a lot of people are obsessed with squirting to kind of see it as like this is something I can make the woman do rather than an experience that a woman can enjoy. It's not like a party trick. So that's why I don't want to devalue it. So that's why I'm kind of holding back somewhat in terms of doing a lot of workshops and things like that because, yeah, because I just think we have to respect as well those African traditions and the people that was transmitted from the different generations.
Because
Okay,
it's not
so
like a parlor trick. And like I see people suggesting animation, but I don't know if people realize that like there's a whole subgenre of porn that is cartoons. So
yeah,
even with
yeah,
that, animation is off limits. It's just something that,
yeah.
and usually when I do Kunyaza, I only limit it. I never have more than 10 women in a workshop
Oh,
because
really? Okay.
it's just easier to control. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Did you block that guy, Habib? What?
Of course, of course. That is just.
Oh my
But
God.
how can you give about how to have a polite conversation with a prospective suitor to see if he'll have any emotional intimacy issues?
Oh, that's a
So,
great question. I heard someone say that, in Islam, love comes after marriage. I don't believe that has to be true. I don't believe that you have to wait until you're married to develop a level of emotional intimacy with the person. I think we do this a lot. I have great emotional intimacy with my best female friends. And emotional intimacy is really allowing yourself the space to be vulnerable with another person. It doesn't mean sharing everything about your life, but it means allowing that space. So I think, sure, there's a way to do that in the courtship process, and it can be with small things like talking about where you want to go in your life. You should be talking about your families and your family structures, and without giving away deep family secrets, you can develop intimacy that way. For me, it's terrifying to think I would marry a person that I have not at least allowed myself to let my guard down a bit with. Again, not divulging too much, but I think emotional intimacy is a muscle that you have to flex and use often. And it's not necessarily falling head over heels in love, but it's allowing yourself the space to emote within the confines of an authentic structure, an authentic relationship that is moving towards commitment. And I think that that's something that has to be modeled. We don't model courtship well in the Muslim community, but I definitely think that emotional intimacy is something that could be established.
another question: how can I be more assertive in bed? I seem to attract selfish partners. That's from a
You got
woman.
to be selfish. They can only be selfish if you allow them to be selfish. They're selfish because, listen, sis, don't waste the ghusl. Don't. Do not lie down and let some man soil you and plant his seed inside of you and get you all wet. You got to go wash your hair and do all that, and you did not get what you came for. That is not the sunnah. That is not what you should be doing. There is no man that I know of, married to, related to, been friends with. There's no man that I know of that would allow you to play with him in bed, and then right before he reaches the point of ejaculation, he rolls over and goes to sleep. But there are countless women who do this every single day. Stop letting these brothers play you. If that means that you have to set down some ground rules, if that means that you have to let someone know, look, I'm not being properly satisfied, then you need to do that. Is there a way to do that tactfully? Yes. Especially if this is someone that you love. If this is your husband and he's not satisfying you and he's being selfish, then you need to let him know. You do not have to give someone complete access to your body. Your body has more rights over you than your spouse does. And Habib said it in the first live. One of the grounds for a Muslim woman seeking divorce is if she's not sexually satisfied. There's a reason for that. So you need to speak up, because if you can use your mouth for his pleasure, you can use your mouth for your pleasure. Speak up and communicate about what it is that you need. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing.
This is actually a question for myself. Can you talk, or can you share, sorry, some of your experience in Senegal, where you was obviously being taught by African elders? 'Cause I just want people to kind of hear like some of your background and obviously the knowledge that you received when you was in Senegal. That which you can share, sorry.
Sure. So my experience with the Senegalese community actually started in America. When I started studying Islam, it was through a Senegambian community, the community of Sheikh Hassan Cisse in Detroit. So Detroit has, at that time, it wasn't large, but now it's much bigger, very big Senegalese and Gambian community. I was also a sabar dancer. So you know, I won't do it online, but if you invite me to your wedding, I'm gonna get out and I'm gonna do my thing, right? And because I was such a good dancer, the elder women would like, where are you from? You know, who are your people? And so they sort of like would invite me in. They would invite me to come and eat. And then slowly but surely, they would start talking to me about things like bin, sep, which is a type of I have some here. It's like a type of reed that you put in water and you drink it and it purifies and it makes like the vulva area very sweet smelling and sweet tasting. Like once they saw that I was interested, they would give me things. They would give me information. And it was always elder women. It was always women. At the time, I was 21 when I first started studying. And these were women in their early 50s, early 60s, who were giving me lots of information about, you know, well, this dance that you're doing, this is what it was originally used for. And I, you know, some of the things, of course, I can't share online. But
Yeah.
once the Senegalese women invited me in, and then I went to Senegal, I was really immersed. And you know, I could speak a bit of Wolof, so, you know, I could communicate with the elder women. And then when I came back, I started being exposed to, you know, because in America, you have people who move in sort of Pan-African communities. So the sister from Congo sees me sitting with the Senegalese auntie. So then she wants to tell me about what they do in her culture. And then the Nigerian sisters. And so it sort of branched out from there. And even with Somali sisters, I have some Somali aunties. We don't typically think of these cultures as being cultures that have a strong and rich tradition of sensual arts, but they do. It just has been hidden, and it's my goal to sort of reclaim it. So I love going to Senegal because I feel like in Senegal, it's one of the places that accepts me in totality. So I can go there as a murid of Sheikh Mahi, right? I can go there as a sex educator. I can go there as a maker of churai. I can go there as a person who, you know, wants to learn the latest seductive dance, and it's all okay. So I really love Senegalese culture for that. It allows me to be my authentic full self. And so, someone is saying
Beautiful.
South Asians definitely don't. That's not true. South Asians do have a very rich sensual culture, a very, very rich sensual culture. So I have to push back on that.
Yeah, I think that's I'm glad you said that, because I think it's important that rather than always looking at some, you could say maybe some negative aspects of our cultures or our history, there are some, like in South Asia, like you mentioned, or in Africa, there are examples of sensuality, positive people, sex positive people that are doing fabulous things, and rather than concentrating and enlightening and kind of lift and highlighting their works, we like to kind of concentrate on like the bad aspects. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I know that even like, for example, with South Asian culture, you don't really mention many people. Well, I don't come across so many people from the South Asian community that speak about like the Kama Sutra and trying to revive that. So that's something that is being bastardized from by the West, and they've kind of used it for their own means rather than trying to reclaim that this is part of our heritage, the same way what you're doing in reclaiming the heritage of our African ancestors. So I think it's beautiful, and I think it's important that we try and reclaim from our cultures that which is positive and affirming, and kind
So
of even share it with others.
absolutely. And there was a comment that said that South Asian aunties don't teach us anything because they know nothing. I don't think that that's true. I'm not saying that every South Asian woman is walking around with this arsenal of information, but I think that there are so few safe spaces to share, right? You have the House of Women in Kayan Mata. When I was in Jeddah, I had Bengali, Pakistani, Indian sisters, when we would have small gatherings, and they would share this tea, this thing, this salve, this rub, and they would all fit under that umbrella of Kain Mata. But I think that there is such a taboo about speaking about sexuality in South Asian cultures because of the British influence, because of the Victorian influence and that prudishness that was brought on centuries ago. So not a lot of these aunties have a space to share. We think of young people being shamed and marginalized, but just think of what our elder sisters had to go through. So unless they have that very safe space, this is why I don't always talk about the names of my teachers. I have lots of African aunties. I have South Asian aunties too, who are like, Angelica, you think you know this, but have you ever heard of this? Oh, this is something, this sounds very similar to this practice that we did. So I think that it's also important for us to have these conversations and know that just because they're not having those conversations in public or even with you, it doesn't mean that they don't know this information. That's why I'm always very, very careful about relationships that I create with people, because I want them to know that what you share with me, if you don't want me to teach it to someone, I won't. If you don't want me to share your name, I won't. But I think it's misleading to say that all South Asian cultures are just naturally repressive by design. I don't think they are. I think colonialism did a number on South Asians just as it did around the world.
Agreed. So, someone mentioned an example of a South Asian sex educator, Dr. Seema Anand. Yeah, I'll definitely recommend people to check her out. She has got a book called The Arts of Seduction. She's based in the UK, where she speaks about the Kama Sutra, but you could say she's reinterpreted it for a modern reader. She speaks about the sensuality of the Kama Sutra. So she's in a good example, and she's got a number of lives. So yeah, like you said, there are examples, and it's important that we kind of highlight those people.
Someone said, what
So many
about Arab
comments.
aunties? Let me tell you, when I was in Saudi Arabia, I have lots of sisters in Saudi, in Kuwait, in Oman, and they're like, please keep doing what you're doing. Lebanon, like these are sisters who, see, that's the thing. There's a secret world of women that even you're
Yeah,
not privy to, Habib, right? You're not privy
yeah,
to it
yeah.
because you're not a man. There's so much that people will tell you. So that's one place where I have an advantage, right? Because people will tell
Mm,
you certain things because you're a researcher,
yeah.
but I get to be
Mm,
in the space. And so I get to
mm,
see the sisters who walk around with the niqab on and gloves, and they're
mm,
sitting in the masjid and they're praying and they're
mm.
teaching Quran, and they're very pious religious women. And I get to see them at their daughter's henna party. And I'm like,
Yeah,
you're like a totally different sister, right? I get
yeah,
to see, the duality and just the all-encompassing, aspect of the sacred divine feminine that resides in these women. So, I think it's unfair to paint these cultures as monolithic. All Arabs are not the same. All Africans are not the same. And I'm going to always
mm,
go back to Africa as the source and the root, because a lot of the sexual traditions that we talk about in other countries actually come from the continent of Africa. We don't give Africa
mm,
enough credit for the traditions around sexuality and sensuality that it deserves, which is why no matter what the racial or cultural background of the women who come to my class, I always let them know I speak from an African-centered worldview, a Pan-African worldview. So all that whole continent, that's where I'm sourcing my information from, and I don't make apologies for that.
Like, I think 'cause I'm just conscious of time. Someone someone asked, where are the men in this life? Now the thing is, there are men that's watching, or there'll be men that'll be watching after we finish, because a lot of men don't want to see people know that they're watching.
When
And
they
again,
see
it's a
me,
lot of it's the ego.
the
No,
men
no,
don't
what?
come
But
on
again,
me.
no, they
When I'm
what?
there,
They
they're
what?
like, she's gonna cuss us out. The men,
No, 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 no. Far from it. A lot of men support you, but they support you in silence. And again, the male ego, we don't want to be seen as,
this is true.
especially learning about sex, whether it's from a man or a woman. So they'll
That's
kind of, I've had a number of brothers that's hit me up, both Muslim and non-Muslim, that was asking me, am I going to save their life? And I was like, why? Because I can't go in and people see my name. So I understand. I don't even question it.
right, right,
So they
right.
watch after. So again, so there are men that's watching, and again, I think with a lot of men, we learn by osmosis. We learn by our environment. We learn by kind of what is kind of seen as socially acceptable. We don't maybe want to go to like a workshop or a discussion. But I'm kind of conscious of time, and I think I've got a few minutes left before the hour's up. So is there anything? Can you talk a little bit again? I know we spoke about in part one, just for the benefit of anyone that's on this part that was on the first part, about your upcoming courses in the new year and your Village Auntie Institute. Could you speak a little bit more about that, please?
Sure.
And where people can buy the tickets.
Yes. So the tickets that I need to charge more for. Thank you for saying that too, Diva. I appreciate it. So in the coming new year in February, I'll be doing a 1-day, 4-hour class on the art of seduction. It is for women. It'll be an interactive class. There will be dancing. We'll be making things. We'll be talking about building self-confidence. We'll be talking about sexual assertiveness. And that will be a class we'll keep it open to about 150 sisters, but be mindful when I drop the graphic and say that registration is open, my classes sell out within a few hours. So be mindful of that. If it's successful, since it's just 1 day, we could do it multiple times. And then I'll have a 3-week storytelling course. That will be my very first class that is open to both men and women. I'm a professional storyteller. I work with the Moth, which is a global storytelling organization. So it will be an interactive class. We'll be doing some writing. We'll be going over the basics of storytelling performance. And then in the 4th week, once the class finishes, we'll actually have a storytelling slam with a cash prize. And then all of these classes fall under the Village Auntie Institute, which is an institute that was launched in September of this year. And it is a way for me to provide a certifying institution so that women who come and take my courses eventually can get certification. So I can offer a Kunyaza certification. I can offer a certification in sacred body care. I also want to very slowly open up classes for men. So I've been in conversation about having a weekend intensive for men on emotional intimacy. I'm not yet at the point where I'm ready to talk to men about sex because, I don't want to be sexualized, but I do want to have a conversation with men about emotional intimacy because I think that when men are given the safe space and the tools to do so, they are the masters of emotional intimacy. So that's what's coming up for the first quarter of Village Auntie. You can follow TVA Institute on Instagram. You can follow me, Village Auntie, on Instagram. Instagram is always the very first place that gets information. And yeah, I'm just super excited with what 2021 could potentially offer, inshallah.
And last but not least, are you available to do any like public speaking events next year if anyone wanted to contact? Obviously paid. No
Yes,
free, there's no free. Yes, yeah.
obviously paid.
So,
Yes, I'm
so you're
available for keynote addresses, speeches, what have you. You can click the email link in my bio, and it'll be sent to my team, contact@villageauntie.com. I have been more mindful about not doing so many free events. So I've already outlined the 3 organizations that I will do a free speaking engagement for. So if you have not already been identified and sent an email, don't ask me to come and show up for free because I won't. And inshallah, I will be opening back up for one-on-one and couples consultations starting in February of this year also. So those are 50-minute sessions with either individuals or couples where we talk about intimacy and relationships.
Barakallah fiqh. Alhamdulillah. That was beautiful. That was brilliant. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence. I hope people did enjoy it and find it as beneficial as I did. I'll try and save this live because I've literally got, I think, a couple more minutes. Yeah, just again, thank you again for everything, the work that you're doing. May Allah preserve you and reward you and give you the best of rewards, not only in this world, but in the hereafter, inshallah, for you and your family. And again, just please keep it up. But also make sure you look after yourself and don't burn yourself out trying to look after everyone. But yeah, thank you again so much. And we'll be in touch soon, inshallah. Assalamu
Thank you.
alaikum.
Walaikum salam.